Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session where we talk about the systems and soft side of sales. And myself and Jason have been doing these sessions for quite a while now, and we alternated between our different profiles, but we're always talking about the soft and system side of sales. Jason is an expert in the soft side of things. I'm a systems thinker, and we decided to collaborate to support everyone in their sales journey to ensure that they get the long-term success. Because we believe with the combination of getting them correct. I'm a process person. I learned sales the hard way. All I could do was leverage my skill sets of process that got me to a very good stage of getting success with sales. And Jason is coming from it, from how do you ensure that you're creating that experience all the way from the beginning of the sales funnel, not just when you get the order, but how do you create that experience, create a buying experience, and then a customer journey experience. So every time we take a little bit of a section of a funnel or we talk about the customer journey, today we're
Mhm.
going to talk about a step very close to the beginning of the sales funnel, Jason. And it's not just the beginning of the funnel, it's the beginning of the touch points with your potential customers, and that is the cold call, right?
Yeah,
And as you
yeah,
know, Jason, we've talked about this before. Like, we've had such pain and more pain and stress and mind-numbing stuff. It's a very difficult element to master, but it's also very important because, as you know, the cost of sales is very substantial, Jason. And if you
yeah.
don't get
It
that
is.
right at the beginning, I always talk about the snowball. If you don't get it right, you're going to be calling too many people that you don't need to call because your starting point with this cold call is wrong. So if I was to ask you, Jason, first of all, welcome,
Thank you.
welcome. And if I was to ask you, Jason, like, when you started, what was your first experiences with the cold call? When did you have that horrible feeling inside when it was going wrong? And what was the eureka moment and when you said, oh yeah, now I can process this and I can learn how to make sure that experience on the call will get me the next stage?
Yeah. Look, I cast myself back probably about 25 years. I'm showing my age a little bit now. In London, square mile of London, square mile to everyone else is the financial district. It's the biggest area. All the biggest companies are there. Back in the day, went on a training course. The trainer was pretty bad. He used to slam the tables down when you got things wrong, really put the fear up into you. So it wasn't really positive reinforcement. It was almost like a negative reinforcement, and you cocked things up and you didn't get things right. And a lot of experienced people around me selling digital connected copiers in the centre of London. So the approach was bad, but after the training course, the sales manager would say, "There you go, off you go, hop it, son. Uh, here's the here's the yellow pages. Here's the Rolodex. Here's some people that we might have called before." And then you have to work out, go out in the city centre, and then cold call, knock on people's doors, as well as picking up the phone. So the first part of it was pretty terrifying, and it shouldn't be like that. It should not be framed as cold calling sucks, and it shouldn't be saying that this is going to be fearful, this is going to be dreadful, and before you know it, it is. Really, in your mind's eye, as a soft selling skill, it should be a warm call, it should be an introductory call. It's the best foot forward for your company, the best foot forward for your business. Before you pick up the phone, there's a bit of a strategy before you do that. You have to do your research, you have to do your due diligence. We are so lucky now. We have these wonderful tools of LinkedIn. We have wonderful websites with all of the people, all the jobs, or everything like that. So you, depending on the size of the company, and you have to find your influencers, you have to find the key
Mm,
decision makers, you have to find the users as well. If it's a large enterprise sale, a slightly different approach to an SME. An SME is you can hit the owner, you can hit the business owner, or you can hit the CEO if it's like 25, 50 people in the company. So it's a slight easier approach than the big corporate, which has a few more steps involved. But still, the challenge is to do your work, plan. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So find out the influencers, find out what they've done online, find out any sort of social media interaction, the latest news, the latest information. Don't spend all your life doing this, but at least plan a little bit so you know what to talk about.
No, well, that's exactly it, Jason. Right? I can't emphasize how important that work is before, because as we were talking about just before we went live, is that it's so important. You don't have to have many people in your funnel, right? They need to be qualified. If you're going to pick that phone up to call a potential customer, you want to make sure that's a qualified to a level of degree. It can't be 100% qualified, but you've developed some criteria that you go, this person is worth a call. And not only, as you said, the person, which person in that business, and then also what are the pain points about that business, the market, that business, but also that particular director, whether it's operations or marketing, whatever it is, the levels of market intelligence of that company, right?
Yeah.
And then, and the eureka moment for me, Jason, when I started going out doing all this myself for the first time, I said I was an engineer. I was just getting a list of companies and ringing numbers, and I was thinking it's a percentage game, and there is that element to it. But why not make everything valuable? And when I started figuring out the strategy of like doing my homework and then a script for the call, Jason, like I literally like engineered the hell out of my script to make sure that I was listening to their reaction as best you can on a phone, Jason, because I wanted to hear, was what I was saying boring them, if they could hear a sigh, or was it exciting them? They go, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And then I mastered it, Jason. But then I was getting meetings, but then I wasn't getting anything after the meeting, Jason.
Yeah.
And going back to my lean world and my lean days and process days, I always thought people think lean is about cutting corners and cutting costs and all that. And that should be the consequence of doing good work. It shouldn't be the goal, right? And anytime there's a touch point with somebody, and again, lean could be manufacturing, it could be supplier, it could be internal customer
Anything, yeah.
or customer, but it's all about how can you add value at every possible step, and in this case, add value at every possible touch point.
Yep.
So then I started thinking, well, how can I add value before the set? And when I started figuring out the list of things I could do, Jason, that I could add value before the sale, that was a game changer to my conversions. And you talk about sales conversion at the end of the funnel, but I'm talking about the mini conversions at every step. How can you ensure the 5 things you do at this step will get you 80% throughput to the next step and next step? And you do that by feedback, Jason.
Yeah, there is always continuous feedback. And going back to the script, I think when you first start out, I think it's useful to design a script, or whether a script's given to you. Do not, and I repeat, and this has been thrown around several times. Some people believe it and some people don't. If you're following a script like that, you sound like a robot.
Oh, yeah.
Learn
don't
it,
read.
practice it so it goes in your head. If there's a few elements that you want to discuss along it, the opener, the middle part, gain clarification, listen, understand, and then the cold call should be quite relatively small, because you're not there to sell. You're not there. All you're doing is to create a little bit of value
and get a meeting,
make
get
them
to the next step.
resonate. And make them resonate to understand about you, your industry, your trust, your connectivity. Will it resonate with them? Build up a 30-second, 1-minute story that will emphasize the fact. Build it up with a bang. Ask them if it's okay to move forward. Always ask them, is it okay? Is it okay to speak with you for the next 5 minutes? Is now the right time, or can I speak to you later? Always get that gain and commitment. If it's not right time and they're busy, and like we're all busy, gain the commitment. And again, go back to the script, understand it, use it, utilize it, memorize it, and put it away. Have some key touch points, but listen to understand. That's the most important, biggest soft skill we can ever have. I don't mean blah, blah, blah that's going on inside your head and you got these other questions that you need to react to. They will know, people know, have a conversation. Shay, we're having a conversation now. We're not in a pitch conversation, but if we were, I would like to treat it quite organic and quite relaxed, and just be calm when you speak to people and use your tone and tonality effectively so they can really understand your passion and your certainty. So, but then you react depending on what they say.
Yeah, and agree, Jason. And with that, by the way, my script in the industry I was in was down to 20 seconds. And again, that is different, Jason. I discovered that first of all, it's not a one size fits all, right?
Yeah, of course.
So different types of customers will either want to learn a little bit about you or just go like, what can you do for me? How can you solve my problems? Let's have a meeting type thing. And in my particular industry, it was literally like that. I was literally finding out their pain points online, finding the problems, and then I was telling them, look, I believe you have these pain points here. I know how to solve them, and this is what I've done with this company. Would you like to have a chat? And that was working well, Jason. But then I realized, well, going back to this adding value to the sale, and again, in my particular industry at the time when I started this off, my goal from the cold call was to keep it as tight as possible. And again, and I totally agree with your point. Have the script, but don't read. Just know it off and sound human, sound like you care. Well, because you should care.
I
First of
would
all,
even role play this as well. A couple of things that I would do is role play it with a friend, a colleague, or whatever, just so it sounds good. Spend time on this because when you pick up the phone, you just want to sound conversant. Or record yourself. We have these wonderful technologies like we're on at the moment. You get Zoom, or you have your smartphone, you have everything else that which is at your fingertips right here and now. Practice, 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 practice till you sound good at what you do. Then something that I advised a customer call center many years ago, about 5 years ago, is we practiced and we played around with this. Is one side we got a whole load of mirrors and we set them up so they were looking at themselves when they're actually doing the call. And I said, smile every time. And they could see themselves and they can see their body language. They can see their posture. And then some of them have said, stand up when you're doing it. So stand up, your physiology goes up. I know, as you know, you was on the same course as me many years ago with Terry Small. You're 10% more intelligent when you stand up. And the brain, the endorphins are rushing up to your brain. So when you are walking around, and we noticed there was literally 15% more productivity and more closures and more better cold calls, or should I say warmer calls, with those end clients when they were having the mirrors than the other ones that wasn't having the mirrors. So a little bit of fun and psychology there, but it was just so true. Once you see yourself and you're on the phone like that, it makes a huge difference. Subtle differences like that.
Well, they're the subtle differences, Jason. You do a little bit here, as you said, look in the mirror, stand up, move around, get your energy flowing. All those different things can be felt through a voice on a call, Jason. And this leads me on to, for me, it was a very important element what I was doing. And that was my energy dynamic through the course of a day. Like, I discovered that I was better at doing different types of activities at different times of the day. Like, for example, morning, answer emails, do a lot of admin work, get that stuff out of the way so I could focus on value. Between sort of the hours of sort of 11 and 1 or 2, I was really good at talking with people. Words flow, or like my voice and words would flow. But then in the afternoon, evening time, I was much better at, like, if I had to do a report or I had to do something long word wise, words would flow on a computer, and it's not always as straightforward as that, Jason, but I always did my best to package different types of activities to suit my energy dynamic through the course of the day. And that was a big game changer for me.
There's a lot of scientific research based on that, on our different systems. But the challenge is when you're doing it internationally. So as an example is, if we're speaking to someone on a different time zone, their energies are slightly different. Because I'm the same as you. In the mornings, I'm more of a vocal person. I can speak to people better. But then I have a little bit of a lull where my brain doesn't go to sleep, but it's better at doing other tasks. So maybe that's research, maybe that's planning for the next day or whatever, or you do that at the end of the day, however you plan your day. And then you can get back onto the phone maybe at another point in the afternoon. I think the key thing is have a light lunch, because there's nothing worse than having that lull and having too much food and you get brain fog in the afternoon. I would have healthier food, because that really affects my state. And it is when you cold call, it is your state management. So design your day around how you best fit and how you can best communicate to others to get what they want. But when you're on a global stage, you have to work out is the other people in their time zones. That's always a challenge if you are picking up a call. So again, listen as much as you can talk. Make things clear, precise, quite succinct. So there is eureka moments, a resignation from their side and an understanding from their side that they can go, oh, right, yeah, I get that. Let's go on to the next step. But always there's lots of different touch points. For the first part, it's maybe either get a meeting or to do something, or to follow up by an email with a video or something. But again, what I was going to say, and I'll conclude and let you finish off. We're so lucky nowadays, because there's people helping you along the steps. There is warm calls, meaning they've signed up for something. They signed up for a newsletter. They signed up to download a material from your website. There's lots of more engagements, so that the people understand what you do before you give them a call. And that's awesome.
Yeah. But Jason, that's like you mentioned the warm call, right? And that to me is a fascinating, even with a cold customer, how do you turn a cold prospect, but have a warm call? So it's you've never talked to them. They haven't downloaded and anything from your website. So this is a cold call, but how can you make it a warm call? And this is, again, Jason, going back to planning, what is the output that you want for this cold call, right? That's the first thing. And then I always like to break things down into the sort of three main phases. What do you want out of it? What do you do during it? What do you do before, right? Yep. And again, you said there's different types of clients and you have different activities. But if you're talking about the bigger ticket items, there's a million and one things you can do before you ring up a director of a big utility company or a CEO of a multinational. There's a lot of things you can do to actually make that cold call a warm call. And that's called preparation.
That is preparation. And I was going to suggest, like, social media now is a huge influencer, but never sell on LinkedIn, as an example. All you do is you're branding personal you. If you are connecting and and chatting with someone, you take it off and then you arrange the meeting, I would say it's an introductory meeting, because you've done the cold introduction online, whatever you've said and suggested, and you've been chatting with the guys online. Then there's a point of taking it off there. You set up a Calendly Zoom calls, Calendly call. So that's a warm call. That's a warm introduction. You've got the initial points. They've checked you out. They checked your personality. You checked your brand. They checked everything else out. Then you can go on to the first introductory call. You could call it a cold call, because they don't know you as a person, but they might know of your background, and vice versa. And that's really good. But still double up and do even more research, so you know so you understand a few of the pain points, if you can find the pain points. And then you just discuss what value that can help them move forward.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be.
And absolutely, Jason. And just to give an example, I worked with a big firm, like must be about 5 or 6 years ago now, and they were targeting some of the big utility providers in Ireland. And talk about this research that part of the process we developed, we actually employed, got the services of a third-party consultant to help us figure out what were the pain points in this industry, on the different levels. So we were looking at who is our target. Was it the chief marketing officer? Was it the chief operations officer? Was it the CEO, right? We eventually picked it down to the operations officer. And what we did, we got this consultant to help us figure out specifically what were the market issues. And then within the company, what were the company issues? But more specifically, what were the issues of this operations officer, right? So once we did that, we set up a campaign. We sent them 3 postcards, week apart from each, right? And the goal was, the output of this was to get a cold call, and it wouldn't be a cold call, it would be a warm call. And each card was a little postcard with a different message. We know your industry pain points, and we listed them. And we would say a nice little tagline to show that we understood it. Then the next one's, well, we know your business issues, and we mentioned a few. And then we know your issues. Let's have a call. And more, by the time we sent the third, we kept a week in between, and we were going to keep it a week in between. We made a cold call, but they were calling us, Jason. It actually worked so well that we nailed it, because we had done the prep, we'd done the market intelligence, that they were actually calling us. We didn't have to wait to call them. And that's just one example of all the different activities you can do before a cold call. You just don't pick a name, pick a company, pick a name, and pick up the phone. There's so much research, because yes, it's a lot more work up front, Jason, but the amount that will save you in not having to make so many cold calls and then get so many meetings. You've reduced your sort of bloated funnel to something that's very streamlined and systematic.
Yeah, I think systematic is absolutely key, and there is a process to this. But understanding the process, there's lots of different touch points that you need to do, and as long as you state that down, sometimes you can do a spreadsheet and then have a look at all the different, or you use your CRM to do that, or whatever it might be. I find the bigger accounts, you have the person that you initially speak to, understand the pain points, but then you understand once you progress a little bit further and you get to the decision maker, you understand the pain points for different parts of the organization. So whether it's the IT part and you understand their issues and challenges, then you understand the marketing area and the users as a point. But using those people as your champions to get in front of the sole decision maker. And that's really a cold call, but that's a warm call in front of them, because they don't necessarily know of you, but they can understand the challenges, the opportunities around the whole business decision. Something that I've learned to do quite recently, and I'm always learning, is once we do the initial cold call, and we're lucky and we're good to get onto the next step, is to have a shared document of all the touch points and all the people that you need to speak to, and share this with the client and say, look, this is the first step. We'd like to go a little bit further on, if that's okay and if that works for you. I'm going to put the next touch point is yourself and someone in the marketing department, or whoever that might be. So you have a continuous working document. The more you can get people to collaborate on that process, the better that they're going to be working with you to help you the end goal, what the end goal might look like. But that's just a running document. That might be a little bit further down the line.
That is, and I'll tell you, that's a conversation in itself, Jason. But what I love about the psychology of that alone is that you're teaching them a way of working with you before you're actually working with them. You're getting them into that sort of zone of collaborating with you, and that really helps to the next stage. So I do think, Jason, I have a lot of ideas, because I call this like sort of creating an inquiry process. Once you have the cold call and you get to the next step, how do you ensure that you can continue progressing and you're not in the situation where you've got what's that the entrepreneur show The Apprentice, right?
Oh, The Apprentice.
Where, you know, they're brought into the boardroom at the end and they go, you're fired because we asked you to do 10 things, you only did 5. And so many times, Jason, I've worked with clients that when they were putting their proposals together, they were so off when they submitted it. No wonder they didn't get the job. They wasted so much effort. They did all the hard work to get there, but then they ruined it because their proposal isn't what the customer wanted. And I do think there's a huge conversation we can have around that process again.
I
the
think
system
we need
side.
to discuss how I like to say it, it's unpeeling the onion. So different areas, ask question, ask question, ask question, ask question, ask more questions until you get to the core. Before you get into the features, products, and blah, 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 all of that sort of stuff, then you can go into a little bit more value. I think that's. I think we should maybe leave that for conversation next week.
That can be our next conversation. But if we were to wrap up this conversation, right? What is your number one piece of advice for people when they do this cold call process?
Plan. Practice. Find the right people that you need to speak to. Make it as much of a warm call than anything else. Have core points. Do your wow statement. Ask them for commitment. If everything's okay, to carry on speaking. Listen and shut up before you engage. Get the other person to speak. This process should be a two-way system, and make sure it is. Use those and use that.
Yeah. Well said. It is a superpower. Listening is a superpower as far as I'm concerned, Jason. My piece to close it out is all of that, Jason, right? You've said it very, very, very well. But my piece, one thing that has stood me very well over the years, Jason, is how can you add value to the person or the prospect
Absolutely.
before the sale? And just to give a quick example, like I help companies solve problems. So instead of me going into a sales meeting, which will take 35, 45 minutes or whatever, I'll offer them a free hour session. Bring in 5 or 6 of your stakeholders. We'll solve a problem. We'll spend an hour doing a workshop. They get a lot more value. Like I get value because I learn a lot more. And then they can see, am I suited for them? And I can see if they're suited for me. So
Absolutely.
I add value. I'll walk away, no strings attached. I'll help them with something. And then we can see if there's a fit. And that works really well. Time works really well. Give them your time. Add value before the sale.
Yeah, I totally concur with that. And I would have actually said all of that as well.
Look,
brilliant.
Yeah, as usual, Jason, it's always a pleasure to collaborate and talk and shoot the breeze with these things. And thanks, everyone. Russ, Lee, Lara, and Sue. Hello, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for tuning in.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.